Hi friends, today we're going to talk about graphing an inequality on a number line. This is a very important concept because we build on it in college algebra quite a bit, and so it's important to be able to visualize an inequality and then also to graph it in a way that you can understand it. We'll also talk in the next video about using a number line to go to interval notation. All right, so if we see something like x greater than 2, a lot of times students will struggle with how to read this symbol here. And so I'm just going to make some notes over here on this side. So when we say x greater than 2, I tend to remind students that we can think of this like a Pac-Man. It could also be Mrs. Pac-Man. That's what I played when I was a little girl. All right, and Pac-Man is always going for the bigger number. So when I think about this being x greater than 2, and I draw the Pac-Man in to fill out the greater than symbol, I know that x is the bigger number, because Pac-Man always goes toward the bigger number. Okay, so that's a good way to remember that. Also, let's talk for a second. If we have greater than or less than, which are these two symbols here, on a number line, we'll represent that with an open circle. We can also use parentheses to represent it as well. Those mean the exact same thing. When you see greater than or equal to or less than or equal to symbols, we'll represent those with a closed circle on the number line, and it can also be represented as square brackets. So these are literally square. They look like parentheses that have been squared off on the top and the bottom. All right, so with that information, when I have x greater than 2 and I want to put it on a number line, the first thing I would do is I draw my horizontal line with arrows on both ends. And that's my number line. And I'm going to mark the value that I'm concerned about. In this case, it's 2. Now, I can put 2 wherever I want to. It doesn't matter. I don't have to put 0 unless your teacher tells you to. We're really just representing which side of 2 we're concerned with. So I've marked 2 in the middle there, and that's enough. All right, I want x greater than 2. So at 2, we're going to place, oh, let me get a different color. We're going to place an open circle. All right, because that means that the value of x can get very close to 2, but it can never be equal to 2. So you can sort of think about that open circle as like a force field protecting the value of 2, but we can get real close to it. Because our inequality is x greater than 2, we want to shade the side that represents that. And that's going to be to the right side, everything bigger than 2. And that's going to go on forever, and I'll represent that by shading the arrow on the right side as well, showing that all of these numbers to the right of 2 are bigger than 2. So if you were asked to graph this inequality, this number line is what you would want to give. Let's look at another one. I have y less than -1. Okay, so I'm going to draw my number line just like I did before, a horizontal line with arrows on both ends. And I'm going to mark the number we're concerned about, which is -1. So I'm just going to put a slash through that number line and label it -1. Now, again, it's a strictly less than. We don't have a less than or equal to, so it is going to be an open circle on the slash through -1. And I want everything less than -1, so that is going to be to the left and including that arrow, because as infinitely small as we can get in those negative numbers, they are all going to be less than -1. Now, I said over here we could use parentheses or brackets to mean the same thing. I'm going to draw that above where I did the open circle just so you can see what it would look like if I use parentheses or brackets. So for x greater than 2, I would do parentheses opening to the right at 2, and then draw my shaded line to the right and including that arrow. So it sort of looks like an anchor turned on its side. For y less than -1, I would again do a parentheses because it's strictly less than. The parentheses is opening to the left. That horizontal line would extend to the left, and also that arrow on the left pointing in that left-hand side direction, indicating that we're going on forever in the negative direction. All right, let's look at the next one. I have z greater than or equal to -4. So I'm going to start with my number line. If it makes you feel better to mark 0 on there, great. For this one I will. I'm going to mark 0 and then I'm going to mark -4. -4 is, of course, our value that we're concerned about. We want greater than or equal to -4. That's going to be a closed dot on -4. Because I want greater than or equal to, it's going to be shaded to the right, including that arrow. If we were to use the brackets or parentheses, we would have a square bracket at -4 opening to the right with a horizontal line going to the right and an arrow. Both of these are equivalent ways to represent this. All right, last I have t less than or equal to 0. Again, I'm going to draw my number line, that horizontal line with arrows on both ends. I'm going to mark the value that we're concerned about in the middle, and that's 0. All right, I want t less than or equal to 0, so I will have a closed dot on 0. And I'm going to shade to the less than side to the left and include that arrow, indicating it goes on forever. If I were to use square brackets, I would have a square bracket because it's less than or equal to, opening to the left, horizontal line drawn to the left, and an arrow. Okay? All right, so if we are going from an inequality to a number line, graphing on a number line, this is what it would look like. A third way that we could represent these is with interval notation. Now, I like the parentheses and the brackets when we jump to interval notation. I think you'll see why. Interval notation describes an interval, and we write it with either parentheses or brackets as a beginning place, comma, to an ending place. So let's look at this top graph right here. It begins at 2, and it ends on this arrow, which represents positive infinity. So that interval, the area that I shaded, is going to go from 2 to positive infinity. Now here's where we indicate if we include them or not. We are not including 2, so we use a parentheses on the 2 side, just like we did up here with this parentheses. On the infinity side, we always use parentheses with infinity. So my interval would be parentheses 2, comma, infinity, close parentheses. All right. Let's look at the next one. Notice on this top one, I labeled infinity on the right-hand arrow. On the second one, I'm going to label the left-hand arrow as negative infinity. So when we talk about a starting place for this shaded interval, it's going to begin at negative infinity, and it's going to go up to -1. We always use a parentheses for negative infinity, and because we have an open circle here, we'll use a parentheses at -1. So my interval notation would be parentheses, negative infinity, comma, -1, close parentheses. All right, on this next one, I'm going to do the same thing. I will label infinity on the right-hand side, that right-hand arrow. So this one is going to start at -4. It's going to go up to positive infinity. But because we have a closed circle or we have a square bracket, we are including -4. So it will get a square bracket on its side. Infinity always gets parentheses. So my interval notation would be square bracket, -4, comma, infinity, parentheses. All right, last one. I'll label negative infinity on my number line. So my interval notation would go from negative infinity up to 0, parentheses on the negative infinity side, and square bracket on the 0 side. It's very important to be able to convert between each of these forms because you will be using all three as you go through college algebra.